Hello and welcome to this edition of the program. I am Imonia Marere. On Tuesday, February 27, 2024, President Bola Tinubu launched the Expatriates Employment Levy, otherwise known as the EEL. The EEL is a government-mandated contribution imposed on organizations that engage expatriate workers in Nigeria. Its objective, according to the government, is to promote skills transfer and knowledge sharing, balance economic growth and social welfare, enhance collaboration between public and private sectors, and address demographic shifts. The policy stipulates that every eligible expatriate worker is required to present an EEL card at the time of entry and exit from Nigeria. The card will serve as a mandatory document like a passport. The handbook of the policy specifies that the expatriate levies will be computed at $15,000 for every expatriate on director level and $10,000 for those on other levels. However, the handbook in paragraph 8.11 provides that the EEL will be based on the offshore earnings of the expatriate working in Nigeria. The EEL is payable annually and qualifies for tax deductions as a validly incurred business expense. Now, by this policy, employers are required to register their expatriate employees through an online reporting portal that is set up for this purpose. Expatriates that are on quota or are in Nigeria for at least 183 days in any 12 months period will be liable to pay the EEL. The only exemptions from the levy are accredited staff for diplomatic missions and government officials. There are, of course, penalties for violating this policy. And that means that violators of this policy, which comes into effect on March 15, 2024, risk a fine of 3 million naira for each offense. The offenses are in 4 categories. 1, not submitting EEL. 2, not registering an employee. 3, not renewing the EEL within 30 days. And 4, providing false information on EEL. Now, employers have, however, been given a 1-month grace period from March 15, which is the commencement date, up to April 15th to comply with this new policy. Now, according to the government, the project will be operated on a public-private partnership model. While some analysts have described the policy as revolutionary, that will impact the economy positively, others have faulted it as exploitative and dangerous to foreign direct investments. While supporters of the policy point to several other countries, especially in the Middle East, that have implemented similar measures to grow their revenue base or control the influx of expatriates, its critics say it will weaken the ongoing fiscal reforms and could trigger reciprocal actions from other countries that could, of course, affect Nigerians who are in the diaspora, especially those who are employed in the diaspora. This is the crux of our discourse on the program today. What are the possible benefits of the EEL? What are its possible drawbacks, especially for an economy that is seeking foreign investments? And of course, the question is asked, why now? Well, I have joining me in the studio 2 analysts who will help me to break down the issues as they are. Abiodun Adeniyi is a professor of communication at Bayes University, and He's a public policy analyst. Thank you so much for finding time to join us, Prof.
My pleasure, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Also joining us is Dr. Law Mefo. Dr. Mefo is a lawyer and a public policy analyst. Thank you so much, Dr. Mefo, for joining me.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a social psychologist, social scientist.
All right.
It's my name that keeps
That keeps...
I think I have to go and read law.
That's right.
Thank
Quite
you.
a while. It's quite some time now.
I was going to ask, have you banned me from...
No, I'm not at all. Welcome.
I'm happy to be here.
Great to
Thank
have
you
you
for
here.
hosting us.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, before we dive into our discussion proper, let's take this soundbite from the President and the Minister of Internal Affairs at the launch of the EEL.
I've been further assured that the project has the capacity of plugging loopholes and gaps that have bedeviled the country in dealing with security challenges. Movement of foreigners in and out of the country. Interestingly, this scheme will wield the fold of revenue generation as well as addressing the unemployment challenges and salary gaps attendant in the remuneration of expatriate workers as compared with Nigerian counterparts.
The main essence is to be sure that if you're bringing an expatriate to work in Nigeria, it should be a job that no Nigerian has the skill to do. That's the major objective of this particular initiative. Balancing of employment opportunities between Nigerians and expatriates. And of course, closing wage gaps between expatriates and the Nigerian labor force by making it more attractive to hire Nigerians.
We must assure Nigerians that there's light at the end of the tunnel. We might be going through difficult periods. Now, but when you look at the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission there, Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget, National Planning, and people manning this ship of this country, including Central Bank of Nigeria, they have collaborated, and in the spirit of development and progress, we are glad that good effort is being made.
President Bola Tinubu and the Minister of the Interior there talking about the EEL and the possible benefits for Nigeria. But let me come to you, Professor Adeniyi. The EEL, is it a new concept in terms of regulation of expatriate employment in Nigeria, or indeed elsewhere in the world?
It's absolutely not new. It's something that countries do to enhance their revenue, the opportunity for more revenue. You know, it's operational in Singapore, in Saudi Arabia, in Japan as well, and some other Middle Eastern countries. You know, it's a gap. You know, it's a kind of levy that comes in between. When expatriates are, for instance, coming into this country, they pay what they call CPAC, which is about $1,000 to $2,000, and beyond that, they do not pay anything else other than the personal income tax that all of us pay as workers, people who work in this country. But when they work, you know, the personal income tax, you and I know, goes to the state government. But expatriates, being what they are, people in Nigeria, people in construction, in mining, they move from state to state. So it is possible for them often to evade tax because of their cross-state movement. Nothing goes otherwise to the federal government. So the EEL is supposed to come in between the CPAC they pay and the personal income tax, which is a regular tax. No other tax, no other obligation is expected for them, apart from the CPAC and apart from the personal income tax, which are relatively insignificant if you look at expatriates and the monies that countries harness, from immigrants, as the case could be, in the case of Nigeria. So it's not new, it's an innovation, really, and of course a way to drive off our revenue base, without necessarily discouraging foreigners or expatriates, from patronizing us in terms of seeing us as a place where businesses can thrive. For me, I think it's a control mechanism, a way to increase the obligation of foreign business people, to the nation as it is, especially a nation that is in dire straits, the economy is at a tailspin and looking for resources, faced with the volatility in our mainstay, the oil sector, and of course, needing infrastructural development, needing resources for infrastructural development. We have in excess of 100,000 expatriates in this country. If our even estimates put it at around 300,000, so if we have all this huge number, it means our country is attractive. But what kind of attraction does our country present, for expatriates? And what category of expatriates are we talking about? We have a situation where the quota system allocated to the average company owner, the average company employer, is designated. But oftentimes you see them flouting this quota. How are they able to bring in the so-called expatriates? Yes, we know they are expatriates and they are expatriates. You see them populating different sectors because they are abusing the quota. Now, if you have a regulation, we should expect some level of control so that this huge inflow, uncontrolled number of influx of expatriates taking over jobs that ordinary citizens can do, will be minimized, as the case could be. So that's what I think. That's the way I want to look at it, not necessarily to discourage people, but to introduce some control mechanism in the way we see it happening in other countries. Countries all over the world, developed, sophisticated, civilized countries, are in the habit of reviewing their laws, their immigration laws. In fact, some countries do it almost every year. And of course, if you want to go to the United Kingdom or any other country, for instance, you can imagine how much our citizens pay. Sometimes people sell their houses, they sell their homes, they borrow monies. Sometimes, even though when they get there, some of them regret it, but a huge amount of money is required to process your immigration, your residency in these countries. And of course, what it means is that they price their country. Their country is not a free-for-all location where all Tom, Dick, and Harry will just come into. But if you have to come, and you want to really come, then there are some processes they need you to go through. There are some obligations that they need you to meet. That's what I think Nigeria is just waking up to, rather than sleeping on our rights. It's something that is happening in some other countries. And of course, if we are thinking about it, why not? Considering our population, considering the fact that we have quite a huge number of Nigerians that are jobless. And of course, sadly, you see these jobs being taken over by expatriates, so-called expatriates, in the supermarket industry, in the hospitality industry, in different industries that Nigerians can otherwise ban. They're taking them over because we are somewhat neocolonial, thinking that whatever is foreign or whatever is not our color is superior. Because again of the weak control systems, irrespective which around the weak control around Local Content Act, around the Immigration Act, and of course in like you see in other sectors as the case could be. Nigerians can do it if given the opportunity. We see how Nigerians are excelling in the banking sector. Which expatriates will you see in our banking sector, apart from in software development, but they come as consultants and they leaving Nigerians to handle it. So if there are mechanisms to strengthen the participation of Nigerians in industries, why not?
Now, Dr. Mefo, Prof just said we are just waking up to this.
Yeah, I think so.
Why now? I mean, why the choice of this time to activate this initiative, which I understand was actually started by about 4 years ago by the previous Buhari government, but didn't take off?
I think it has to do with the distraction the country has faced from, should I say, petrodollar. We believe we didn't need more money. from other sectors and so on and so forth. And the focus has always been on oil sales and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, that is no longer sufficing on the whole and in the main. And I believe that that is providing additional motivation for the government of the day to begin to really diversify and look at all the avenues where we could raise income. That is one level of it. The perhaps more important aspect is that this is quite long overdue. And of course, you rightly recognized that the Buhari administration started it about 4 or 5 years ago. Yes, you're right. And President Tinubu is now implementing it. It's an idea whose time has come. And there are reasons for it. Because if you really look at the whole gamut of the reasons why we are where we are, why our economy is on the downturn and so on and so forth, is because certain key policies that ought to have been implemented 2 to 3 decades ago were not really taken care of, and this is one of them. You know, let me paint a bit of a picture here for you to see what I mean. If you look at the Buhari presidency, so many things were not really what they should be. I don't want to go into the details and all that. They are out there in an open, plain sight for people to see. But I believe that if the government of Buhari, took this matter seriously, they would have implemented it because they actually did the spade work. Do you get the point? They did the spade work and everything, the legal angles and so on and so forth. They were able to do all that. I think the Minister of Finance then, Ajia Zenab, right? It was the one driving the process. But now it is an idea whose time has come. Why? Because, like Prof said, if you look at it, countries are already running on this track, which means it is necessary. Now, beyond the issue of revenue generation, we also need to really protect the local industry. Of course, that led to what we call the Local Content Act. But of course, you and I know that the act itself has been observed more in breach. That's a fact. Let's not talk about corruption and all the issues that go with it. But the fact is, this Expatriate Employment Levy will activate or give teeth to the proper implementation of the local content. How? Because one is that, when you talk about expatriate, for me, the word expatriate derives from expat. It means that if you are an organization, a company that needs foreign expatriates to function properly in Nigeria, if you need that, right, it means that those who should really come into Nigeria must be truly experts. But a situation where you have artisans as professionals, you will say technicians as engineers and all that, then something is wrong. And again, even where you have proper experts brought in from outside to do the jobs that Nigerians can very well do, there is a problem also. People argue that there may be a problem of ease of doing business. There may be a problem of not allowing foreign direct investment and all that. No, it's not true. It's actually regulating the environment. And I believe the investments, the foreign investors, are looking for a properly regulated environment so that they will know what to expect. That way they will plan. They will know what to expect. They will plan and ensure that this is the law today, tomorrow, and ever after. And in the process, they will be able to know the pitfalls to avoid. That said, one more thing I need to bring into the fray here is, you see, you have Nigerian youth unemployment, right? We need to create jobs for our people here. So if you're bringing in masons, chefs, and artisans from outside and you're paying them in dollars, right? You are actually depriving Nigerian professionals from getting employed in their own country. That is what this regulation is meant to address. Because if if you look at it from that perspective, it means that Nigerian government is saying, look, if you want to bring in these people, then you pay a levy for it. You have an option, because it doesn't mean that you're deprived of the kind of manpower you need. The manpower is here in Nigeria, mostly. If the manpower is here, mostly in Nigeria, then you have an option of employing local personnel. And this is what they want to evade. And why do they do that? They want to help their own people at our own expense. So this is the foundation and my own takeaway from this policy.
That of course, takes me to my next question.
Yes.
The fact that if you look at very many sectors in Nigeria today, you have so-called expatriates. Some of them documented and some are undocumented.
Yes.
Is this policy likely to address that
Certainly.
issue of undocumented foreign employees in various sectors? Because
no, I'll tell you how. It's very simple. The immigration requirement, if you go to the portal, I ran into it, I stumbled on the portal where you will find the handbook on this. One of the requirements is that you have to hold as an expatriate the EEL card, on the point of entry. It means you can't enter Nigeria without it.
what of those who are already in?
You can't live without it as well. So immigration doing its job will weed all the people out. It's either you comply, or you pay the levy, or you exit the country ultimately. You can't even exit the country without paying the levy. If you read the document and you see all these stipulations, I think it's a well thought out policy. And the time for it is now.
Now, Prof, the whole question of how much is going to be paid for people who are at the director level, it is $15,000 annually, and those below or any other cadre, $10,000. Some have said NECA, for instance, they have said that it's exploitative.
I don't think it's exploitative, to be honest, with every due respect. And if you look at the category of people that we actually call expatriates, the real expatriates, not the pseudo expatriates, who are not the pretenders to people who have expertise, like Dr. Mefo said. The real expatriates are people who have capacity, who have the ability and the resources, and who will be willing to pay these funds, for different reasons. First, they will feel a sense of gratification, a sense of relief that for once order has been brought into the mix, because they are often mixed, they are often jammed with people who are less than expatriates, and sometimes you find it difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff. There's also politics among them, and of course sometimes there are jobs that they know that they can do, that they would rather have done, but quacks are brought in from abroad to do these jobs. Do not forget, Chairman, Senate Committee on Interior, Senator Oshomole, said Nigeria is the only country where you have prisoners being brought into the country to work. How is this possible, if not for the weak system that we're talking about, if not for the absence of any kind of required levy, like other countries are doing to control their own what do you call it, people who are coming to their country. People exploit these things, and we're saying that, with some kind of increased regulation, but of course, efficiency should also have to come into the mix as well. We are hoping that it's going to be efficient, it's going to be productive, and the outcome in terms of resources that will accrue to government from this will be judiciously used. But in terms of the philosophy behind it, the spirit behind it, I think, it's a welcome development, like my colleague has said. But again, I've also taken cognizance of, what man said, that's going to discourage foreign investment. No, rather it should encourage them because they will feel a sense.
And that it will also weaken the ongoing fiscal measures.
No, it's not going to weaken anything. Now, let me tell you, some people have even said that there will be fears of reciprocity. What are you reciprocating? Who are those that are called experts? Expatriates are usually people who come from developed countries, in parentheses, to less developed countries. Those are the ones that you call expatriates. If I lecture as a professor, to the glory of God, in the UK now, in the US, they're not going to call me expatriate lecturer. I'm just a regular lecturer or maybe a foreign worker, and I will pay through my nose, to get those, to go through the immigration mill, maybe they will call me highly skilled labor. Highly skilled labor, that's how I'm going to classify it. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to pay. I will still pay, through my nose. And of course, my designation is not going to be an expatriate. So expatriate is a limited word. There's politics behind the word too. And that's why I believe that because those countries understand these dynamics, they are not going to be charging the regular Nigerian worker who they know is economically disadvantaged in the first instance, who they know that even if they charge, he cannot pay, or that he will exit that country, who is contributing meaningfully to their countries. We have said this severally, there are so many Nigerian experts in those countries doing well in medicine, in law, in academia, and everywhere. They are contributing to those systems. They cannot afford to tax them or to charge them or to levy them just because they want to reciprocate, because they know these people are coming from they are coming from countries that are less developed, that their economies are weak, and they are getting by here, so why should we discourage them? They will understand the circumstances that while they are trying to enhance their regulatory mechanism to bring about progress. And of course, people have also talked about international treaties, WTO, AFTA, and all of that. Yes, I understand what they're talking about, but again, all these agreements does not mean you should compromise basic standards within your own local environment.
That quickly links to the whole issue of whether or not this policy is likely to affect the ease of doing business.
No, it's not going to affect it because, in my own understanding, because the spirit behind those agreements also anticipates that your country should be functioning well. And in international relations, in international politics, you do not compromise your local national interest only because of foreign interests. We have heard about American exceptionalism. Why not Nigerianness? Why not us thinking Nigerian, even though we are not downplaying the importance of the world around us. We do not, it's in common wisdom, it is love your neighbor as yourself, but don't love yourself. Don't love your neighbor more than yourself. You have to protect yourself. Your neighbor must see you as a good person to be associated with before they associate with you. And elevate that to the national politics, to national economy. It's the same thing. Do not sleep on your rights only because you want to placate others. Disadvantage yourself in a situation where you can take and make some advantage out of it. No country in the world will allow the influx of manual labor the way Nigeria is allowing it. But it's on record that the influx of manual labor into this country is unbridled. And if it is not controlled, of course, we will just find out that at some point, even the job you and I are doing now will be taken over by foreigners in the guise of expatriates. Because we believe more in them, thinking that they are better than us, rightly or wrongly, and most times wrongly, but simply because of our own mindset, I mean, look at the streets. Look at everywhere you go to. The hospitality industry, the mining sector, the construction sector. Everywhere you go, you see them, and they are all doomed expatriates. Only because the system is weak and they are circumventing the quota system that they are supposed to have rightly acquired in the first instance. But again, we also know that there are compromises here and there. Our own citizens too are also helping them. Unfortunately, that one is probably a discussion for another day, and that's why we're saying that we need this one, to be effectively run.
We will get there, definitely. But very quickly, let's explain this quota system.
Yeah.
How does the quota system operate?
Yeah, I think from what I know, it depends on employers. Employers will have to explain. They apply for it to the immigration. They apply for it, tell the immigration service the number of expatriates they want, and it is allocated to them. And how it's happened, and when it's allocated to them, they are brought in at very huge costs, and they are supposed to also work. One of their terms of engagement, is that you have to develop, local skills to be able to take over from you at some point. But how many of them do this? Rather, what they do, unfortunately, is to, instead of developing local skills to take over from them, they keep bringing in their own people, relations, friends, to continue with them and denying us legal rights, and it continues ad infinitum without paying any other thing other than what you and I am paying and simply paying. Well, the CPAC they pay is just one-off, or maybe they renew it even every year, $1,000, $2,000 for people who are in multi-billion naira businesses, and there's no other funds that they're expected to pay.
Dr.
And so
Mefo,
if this kind of levy is coming in, I don't think it's too much.
yes. So, Dr. Mefo, this levy is going to be charged in dollars.
Yeah.
Why so? Are these expatriates paid in foreign currency? Is that why they are asking them to the companies to pay the organizations?
Yeah, mostly
to pay
so.
in dollars.
Mostly.
But why not charge in naira?
Mostly so.
Even the equivalent of the dollar.
No, mostly so. Mostly so because the firms that enjoy the expatriate employment in Nigeria actually receive their salaries in their local currencies. Majority of them, at least. So if you receive your money in dollars, why pay us in naira? That's the question. So I think it's logical. Now, since they are paid from their countries of origin, our economy is denominated in dollar. That is the only way you can fairly access what they are paying you. And I think it's properly in order. If they pay in if they pay in dollar, it's because they don't receive their salaries in naira. That's the simple explanation. And to add a bit more, to the whole narration, I believe that those who are arguing that this will drive away foreign direct investments and all that, I don't think so. Like I said before, and for emphasis, let me also repeat, that whoever is investing in a foreign economy wants to see a regulated environment. It's very fundamental. But if you come in an unregulated environment, it means that you will fall into all manner of traps and conditions. The local hands that may want to take advantage of you can do all sorts. And at the end of the day, you are the one at the receiving end. For their own good, what is required is total regulation of the Nigerian environment so that they can come in and do their work. You see, you talked about expatriate quota. What is the logic behind it, or how does it really operate? Like a prof said, you see, the organizations that say they need expatriates to expand or deal with their responsibilities and the job they want to do in Nigeria would want to argue or present the kind of request that they need to be able to fill such gap. But again, the regulation says that you don't just bring in the number you want. For example, if your workforce in Nigeria is, say, 1,000, you don't make it completely 1,000. The Local Content Act insists that there should be a kind of parity between the expatriates and Nigerians. This is very fundamental. Even though much of this is observed in breach, we know so, which is a story for another day, observed in breach. But what it ought to be is what should be addressed. What should be addressed at the moment is that they shouldn't exceed the expatriate quota. They shouldn't. Because the more they do that, is the more they rob Nigerians of their rights. They rob the government of Nigeria of revenue. So the EEL policy is sort of standing in the gap. Look at how it happens, because if you read the handbook like I told you to do, it's standing in the gap. If you want to bring in the number of expatriates you want, you will discover that you will be losing in the amount that you'll be paying because you brought in excess. Whereas you could have hired local professionals, right? And they will give you precisely what those people you're bringing in from outside would have given you at a cheaper rate. That way you will gain two things. One is that Nigerians are employed. One is that our economy is sort of buoyed in the sense that what you are now outsourcing to another country is taken care of by your own country. That is what this policy is addressing.
Okay.
And I think it's very fundamental. And finally, just one more thing. Finally, I also think that you see, you do not just allow your country to be, overrun by new colonialism. This is the way I feel personally, that Nigeria being at the mercy of other countries is not good for us. You have citizens who have excelled in all aspects of human endeavor all over the world. In any human endeavor, you find Nigerians thriving everywhere. So why don't you deploy them to work in their own country? They should look inwards. That is what the EEL is saying. Look inwards. Search for the expertise you need from Nigeria. If you want to bring in the expertise from outside Nigeria, then you pay for it. That's fair enough.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about the implementation next.
Yes.
But before we go on this short break, maybe we should just dispose of this other issue of the timeline for compliance. 1 month.
1 month.
The Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises has said that that time is too short for all the organizations and companies to comply.
Why are they worried? Do you understand what I'm saying? Utilize the window that is offered. Government is not foolish or stupid.
And it's online.
It's online. So if at the end of the day, government says that they estimated 125,000 expatriates haven't registered and the significant number is yet to register because
those are the ones that are documented anyway.
the ones that are documented. So by the time you look into those who are not documented, it will double, perhaps triple that figure. So if they, let them try to utilize the window offered by government. If the window offered is not enough, government is saying it. There will be a review. I'm not speaking for government, but I know that every reasonable government would have a review if they know the window they offered in actuality is not attending to the gamut of work required to be dispensed of within the period. So I don't think that window argument is necessary. They should encourage them to try to use it. Let's see how it works or doesn't work.
All right, well, let's go on a short break. When we return, we'll be looking at the implementation processes. Government says it is going to be a PPP arrangement, public-private partnership in implementing this new policy. Now, how will it work? When we return from the break.
The Nigeria of our dream, the Nigeria we need, is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria, which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT.
Thank you so much for staying with us. We're looking at the workability of the new policy, EEL, Expatriates Employment Levy, which was launched by President Bola Tinubu on February 27, 2024. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, let me ask this question. Why do you think, if this policy is a well-thought-out policy, as we have put it, and is one that will benefit the Nigerian economy, why is it that some organizations and some trade centers are opposed to it?
Well, we can look at it from two grounds. First, there's no policy that can sync well with every section of the community, every section of the society or the country, if you want. Some sections might feel that it's inimical to their progress or to the sustainability of their environment, like Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, like NECA is doing. But sometimes I also believe, like some of them have also hinted, that it's simply because they were not consulted. There was no stakeholder engagement in advance of the meeting, of the policy. But you also know that government sometimes may want to be strategic, because being strategic simply means that if you broaden the range of consultation, it will discourage a policy that will be helpful to your objective. Maybe government took that route without
But
necessarily.
this is a policy that has been in the works for
The past
over 4 years.
and it was I started.
So I mean,
yeah, I started
there's
learning
no way
about
they
it
could
October.
not have
heard
known
about it,
it.
but then it was not announced for implementation. But now that it's been announced for implementation, it's becoming concerning. But look at Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Yes, I know the DG is even my kinsman, a good man. You know, but speaking for the association, he thinks that it will drive off. What do you call
Foreign
it?
direct
Foreign direct.
investment.
I don't think so, because there are so many other sectors where expatriates are involved. Not just manufacturing. They're involved in production. They're involved in the construction, in mining, in oil and gas. You know, in hospitality. They're even coming down to hospitality, and even in groceries. You know, what do you call it? Retail outlets. They're involved in practically all sectors. Even in restaurant business. You know, they are practically being taken over. You know, and of course, sometimes they are even offering executive house help services and chefs and all of that. So, I mean, there's no control anymore. They are taking over practically every sector, not just far from manufacturing, if we want to put it that way. So, I think beyond looking at, you know, the income aspect of it, the revenue aspect of it, we should also look at, you know, the philosophical aspect of it again, which will drive us to the question of patriotism and nationalism. You know, because if we are lovers of our country, we should not just look at it from the angle of saying that, okay, Nigeria has disappointed us in the past, Nigeria is not doing well, so because it's not doing well, we should bring it down. No, the government too deserves some sympathy, and this is one area I think that they need to be sympathized with, because what they are trying to do is to be protective of local labor. You know, to enhance the opportunities of Nigerians to get jobs that are otherwise taken over by foreign expats. You guys will know that some of these people are actually expats, the real ones, not the pretenders to expertise. I know, but again, I think like my colleague said earlier, there are some of these key jobs that Nigerians can actually do, given the right environment, given the right opportunity. But again, some of our Nigerian employers are not even helping matters, because for jobs that the regular Nigerian can do, they go out there and bring in the so-called expatriates to manage their hotels, to manage their companies, saying that they cannot trust in Nigeria, because if you put a Nigerian there, if he's not going to embezzle the funds, he will form union, he will run it down, and all of that. So question of trust comes in. Is it not an area that we should be focusing on? Are these not things that should concern us as well? Instead of thinking that we shouldn't affect change in the area of creating opportunities for Nigerians, as the case could be. And back to what we were talking about, the number of years, yeah, we know 4 years, 5 years, it's been in the works, and of course it's gone around the agencies. It's not just a one agency thing, just like Nigeria Immigration Service is the one responsible for implementation. But I'm aware Ministry of Finance is involved. Budget and planning has been involved over the years. Ministry of Interior, of course, the parent industry, and of course the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission has been involved as well. So all these people over 4 years have been thinking through this thing, from the Buhari administration up to now. I don't think they do not know what they are doing. I don't think they wouldn't have done the appropriate consultation, including with the National Assembly. You know, because the Chairman Senate Committee on Interior was there, and he has spoken about, was there at the launch, and he has spoken about this thing severally. Unbridled, you know, domination of our system, of our workforce, you know, by foreign workers, wrongly called expatriates, even though we know there are those that we can actually call expatriates. I will know the sectors in which we can find this one, Mark.
Now, Dr. Mefo, let's talk about the implementation. Our government, the handbook talks about a PPP model.
Yeah.
But in that handbook, it says government will be represented by the Ministry of Interior and Immigration Services.
Mm-hmm.
But there's hardly any mention of the private sector component of it. Now, there are also fears. I want to combine this with that. There are also fears that this policy, as good as it may seem, could also be frustrated or bungled by public servants.
Okay, go on.
Yeah. Who may, as usual, be collaborating with some of these so-called expatriates or the companies hiring them to ensure that this project does not
see the light of the day.
Yes.
Yes, you have a point there. And I think that that is the reason government wants the private sector involved. There has been this elusive argument that government has no business in business and all that. The fact remains that if you really want to get anything of this nature and magnitude done, you need private expertise in terms of consultancy and so on and so forth. They have a job to do there, a lot of it. And I agree with government for providing that the private sector be involved in the process, in the implementation process. And I also think that it may be strategic not to mention the private partners at this stage and all that, because you may put them out there in the front burner, and all manner of gaslighting will come into effect and so on and so forth. And before you know it, the process is derailed like you have feared. And I also think that it may not have actually gotten to the level where to even recruit the private component. Yeah, because the job they will do will have to be defined ultimately. And you ring the bell for people who believe that they are qualified to fill the space to come in. And when they indicate interest that they can discharge creditably such onerous responsibilities, then vetting will take place professionally in the open space, open site. Everybody will be part of the process. Like I said before, I'm not speaking for government, but I'm telling you what I believe is the normal and natural process in an event of this nature. You need the private sector involvement. For example, when it comes to the ICT, component
of
right, of it, you may do better bringing in private expertise, right? Yes, you have the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy. You also have the National Communication Commission and all that. You have them, but they are ministries. They are part of the MDAs. And like I told you, the government may have genuine reason in terms of bringing in private sector to carry everybody along. That is another aspect of it. Carry the private sector along. After all, most of the companies you are talking about regulating are private sector. They are not governmental. So bringing in the private sector to be part of the implementation process will not only bring in the expertise that is required in the implementation, it will also bring in the factor that I've already implicated, carrying everybody along. And for me, it is a very welcome development. Because policies, let me tell you something about policy. I think it was Thomas Dial that defined a policy as what government decides to do or not, or decides not to do. What that means is that if you leave a policy as entirely a government thing, government may really be in the works and not getting the work done for another 1 decade. Remember, a moment ago, we were looking at the fact that this has been in the mills for the past 5 years. How come he has not seen the light of the day? So I do believe that bringing in the public and the private together in this and pulling it together, if one is lax, the other will be motivating it to push the policy to its logical conclusion.
Prof, looking at the history of PPP arrangements in Nigeria, how convinced are you, or how optimistic are you that this will be different? Against the backdrop of the facts, of the argument that has been made in several quarters, that there could be a sabotage of this entire process by even the public servants, who could indeed do a lot of behind-the-scene maneuvers with companies and even with the expatriates themselves.
What's and all, Mark, I think where we have private sector participation in projects, processes and procedures like this, we often have increased or improved efficiency and productivity. And of course, there are so many collaborations, that we often have, especially where infrastructure, internet infrastructure, online infrastructure is involved. You often have this foreign participation, providing the expertise, the technical support, to back it up in terms of, virtual activation of the mechanisms involved to drive this process. We may not have that sophistication yet, or even when we have it, we may not be able to fund it. So you have these foreign private concerns, offering to fund it, but of course they're not going to be doing it for nothing. And how does it matter anyway if Nigeria is going to benefit more from it eventually, which takes us again back to the questions of critics, also saying that you are driving off foreign participation of foreign businesses. We also have foreign businesses who are encouraging, who are helping, to ensure that this thing go on smoothly. Remember the CPAC that we're talking about, there are reports that it is being administered, by the private sector, international private concerns. They're the ones helping the immigration services. There are so many areas in this country where we have these global international collaborations that we do not know, driven by the private sector. And they are doing well. The oil and gas sector is there, and of course, it's been functioning well because of this kind of arrangement. And we cannot complain because we are getting resources from there. What about the customs and immigration services? There are so many devices, so many payment infrastructure being mounted and administered by the foreign concerns. Even in the media has become very sophisticated in this country. Private media organizations, they get foreign partners, So if private media organizations or private organizations generally, rely on foreign partners, because of their level of expertise in software development, in software infrastructure management, what's wrong, if the public or the government think that we need them or that they need them to ensure efficiency and sustainability of the idea. And because profit and loss is involved, you expect efficiency, But it comes back to what we're saying about the value, that we want to inject into the system. We've got to be serious, this time around, and that's why we're telling the administration to take this seriously. They shouldn't go the way of the Local Content Act or the Immigration Act. If we mean business, let it be business. It shouldn't be business as usual. It should be a business that will be disruptive of previous processes so that we can have a positive consequence for the good of the nation.
Dr. Mefo, before we round off, let me ask this question. Is there a security angle to this policy?
Of course there is. There should be. Even if it is not directly intended, it will be achieved even by default. Because, like I told you, this brings in regulation. It will regulate the environment. It means that you know who comes in and out. That's very fundamental. We already recorded the fact that we are saying that we have 125,000, and this is registered. Those who are not registered may be twice that figure. And the regulation, like I told you, I stumbled on the handbook, and the handbook clearly stipulates that EEL certificate is required to enter Nigeria and to exit. So if you are not registered in Nigeria under the new policy, you can't exit the country. So you can only loaf around and all that. So
the whole question of enforcement comes into play.
That's it. The enforcement, that if the onus now comes back to us, it falls back on government to ensure strict compliance, strict enforcement. If that is not done, at the end of the day, it ends up like any of those many beautiful policies the country has enunciated. In fact, the fact remains that, look, Nigeria is not lacking laws, lacking policies. We have had beautiful policies, perhaps more than most countries of the world. The problem has always been in implementation. So like President Bola has said, the issue is ensure that it's not business as usual. Implement this properly. If you do so, it becomes a security measure, even if you never intended it to be so. Because those who came into the country that are non-Nigerians and are not captured in our database as those who should be in Nigeria will be fished out one way or another. because it means that if you stay in the country beyond the April 15th, 2024, the simple implication of that is that you have become an illegal migrant into Nigeria, or immigrant. An illegal immigrant, you know the consequences according to law. So if you fish out, smoke out everybody to really register, you will ensure that the purpose for which such foreigners are residing in Nigeria. Do you understand what I'm saying? The purpose is clearly known. So those who have no business in Nigeria, they will have questions to answer.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, for what I would say is a robust discussion on this EEL. I'm sure that a lot of Nigerians will be better educated after this program.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you immensely, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, who is a professor of communication at Base University and a public policy analyst. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
And Dr. Law Mefo, who is also a public policy analyst. He's not a lawyer, he says he's not a lawyer. We have always thought he was one.
You're not the only one making that mistake. I'll go and read law.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for hosting us.
And to you, our viewers out there, we want to thank you for investing your time with us. And please do take some time out to look up this EEL and find for yourself some more details about the policy. I'm Imoni Amarere. Bye for now.